Welcome to the She Sells, He Sells podcast, where we are here to change the way you think about sales by getting you to look at it in a whole new way.
Absolutely. And today, live from Studio 1B, as we have named it,
Yes.
we've got a great episode today.
We should name it Studio 1D, damn sure.
Yeah, but it sounds, I guess that works.
1D.
Yeah.
1D.
You guys into it? Great. It's done. But yeah, we've got a great episode today talking a little bit about how pretty much everything is sales, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, one of our most loved episodes, actually, in our first 100, isn't that fun to say, was really titled, I think, Everything is Sales. And we really took on the idea that no matter what your industry was, you were selling. So whether you are a doctor, a nurse, a teacher, in retail, cleaning homes, whatever it is, everyone is in sales. This episode would be a little bit different because we're taking on more of an entrepreneurial and corporate slant, looking at some of the buzzwords, some of the things that everyone talks about as being really important, things we need to master, and making the case that if you don't know how to sell and sell well, those extra skills don't matter.
Right. Yeah. We all love buzzwords, right? I mean, corporate America loves buzzwords.
Yeah, I
right?
think even more than the entrepreneurial world.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Maybe they don't have as nice a ring to them, but we still love the words. So
yes.
I'm excited to get into it because I think that's one thing that I think, we're all guilty of it, right? We sort of lose track that, this person fills this function, their job is X. They're not a part of the sales team or business development team, and they can focus solely on X. And we'll get into a little bit of why I think that might not be the best way to look at it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
But first, as we mentioned, live from Studio 1D. Should we do 1 Delta or 1D?
Nobody says Delta unless you were a military person.
Yeah, but D sometimes sounds like B or C or lots of other words.
That's the play on words because you were saying 1B and now it's 1D.
It's the play on words, ladies and gentlemen. All right.
It's the play on letters.
All right, so live from Studio 1D, which is just outside Studio 1D, is not 30 Rock.
No,
nope.
Sadly.
It is our family room that lives in our basement, and just in that family room are a couple of gaming systems. And I want to give a fun fact about Krista today. For those of you, if you know, as the kids say, right? Chris is a ruthless winner in Mario Kart. Like, do not challenge her to Mario Kart. She doesn't care. She will throw the red turtle shells at you. She will do anything she has to do to win. And sometimes with Bennett, it's a little bit of oil and water.
Not with me. With you.
Your face was like, oh no.
With you.
But you don't like to give an inch, as the folks say.
I give an inch to Bennett, not to you.
I didn't realize that's how it is. Okay.
Yeah, why do you think Bennett gets mad at you and not me? Because I let him win. It's not like I try to let him win. Sometimes he beats
naturally.
me, but I don't go hard at him. Or if I have a turtle shell and Bennett's in front of me, I won't throw it. I'll throw it behind me. But if I have a turtle shell and you're in front of me, I get so excited to throw it.
That's right. Yeah. So I guess that's what it is. Maybe a little competitive streak there. I mean, I think I will say I put the crown on your head. You are maybe the champion of the family at Mario Kart.
I don't know. I might be getting dethroned. You and Bennett are. We're all pretty good guys.
Yeah, we're a family of gamers.
It's a family talent.
Yeah.
Bennett and I. That was kind of our thing because I just said to him, "Do you remember when you were homesick from school in like preschool?" And I think he had COVID before COVID. We knew it was COVID. It was like early January or January 2020.
Yeah.
And I remember he was sick for like 5 days, and like I couldn't even take him into a store because I felt bad because it wasn't that like sick that sometimes the kids are for days off of school. He was sick. And we did Target drive up because he was so bored, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do with this boy. He really can't do anything. And so I said, let's get Mario Kart. And we went to Target and did drive up and went home, and that became our thing for a really long time. We would come home from preschool and we would do Mario Kart together. And then you had to get in on the fun and make it not just my thing with Bennett, but your thing with Bennett too.
Well, anyway, Princess Peach.
No, it's not who I do. I don't do Rosalina.
It's just they look the same.
No, Rosalina's got like a total badass haircut. She's got it over one eye, a little mullet action, but she makes it cool.
I didn't know she had a mullet.
She has the mint dress on. She's a badass. Princess Peach, she's fine, but she's a little vanilla for me.
So Rosalita is what I think
Nina.
of. Yeah, that's the Springsteen Rosalita version. Yeah. Anyway, if Chris challenges you to any online Mario Kart, think twice about gambling on it, because she's a ruthless winner in Mario Kart. She doesn't
just
care.
unlock new levels.
She will put you in the wall like old NASCAR. New levels, right? Yeah, Ava did remind me that you paid for something to get the new levels.
It's a new game. The girls were so upset. I'm like, you literally want me to pay like $25 for a new tube of mascara? This is way more valuable than that.
For the whole family, right?
Exactly.
The whole family.
Exactly. It's gonna last way longer also. So back to important things. Yeah. The reason that we started thinking about this episode, really, I created a social media post a few weeks ago about this because I started seeing, it really started with personal branding. I started seeing so much more stuff over the last few months about personal branding. You need a personal brand. You need a personal brand. And I don't even know how, I think everyone's definition of personal brand would be a little bit different, but essentially it's positioning yourself as a thought leader, someone people want to follow, as an entity outside of what you do. I think it's actually, a personal brand is really important, more so not as an entrepreneur. If you're an entrepreneur that has a company, so if you're Sarah Blakely and you have Spanx, then developing your own Sarah Blakely personal brand is really important because you are outside of your company, but you also want to be seen as the CEO and the founder, right? Like Gary Vee, your favorite. Gary Vee has Vanderchuck, I think that's how you say it, media. But Gary Vee's personal brand is even stronger than the company. So I have ACORN, which is a sub-brand from my personal brand, Krista Dempster. But I think in corporate, it's also really important. So that's really about, you don't just work for a company, you are your own brand.
Yeah. And truthfully, I've been a little late to the game in developing my own personal brand. I'm a work in progress, as the kids say. I'm still trying to get better at it. I will say, 20 years ago when I entered the corporate world, I don't think this was really nobody really thought about this. This really wasn't a thing, right? Like developing your own personal brand wasn't really something that people talked about, or that was part of like any sort of mentor-mentee relationship you had, or any sort of professional development. It just wasn't on anybody's radar,
Right, but it is now.
Right,
and I would say. So here's the other thing about when people talk about brand, personal brand, like we all have a personal brand. That's not the question. The question is, have we intentionally curated that personal brand? So your personal brand can be what you put out there. It can be what you don't put out there. It can be what people see. It can be what they don't see and what they infer based on seeing you through other people or hearing you speak. So you definitely have a personal brand as a part of this podcast.
Yeah.
It's just you're not necessarily creating content on a platform to promote your personal brand. Yeah,
totally. And I will say this, I really believe this now, like if you don't take control of that narrative, someone will for you. So just like any good PR rep would tell you, right? If you don't control the messaging and the narrative, if you're a famous person and something happens, they all have PR handlers, right? Well, the reason those folks exist is because if you don't control the message and the delivery of the message, someone will do it for you, and it may end up not being what you want.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I started thinking a lot about this personal brand thing because when I think of what I teach in our ACORN programs, it is building a personal brand, but I don't call it that. I consider it a part of your sales foundation because in the world we live in right now, you cannot hide behind a product or a service. You need to be a part of it. And so when I see programs selling build your personal brand, to me, they fall a little bit flat unless they are saying the goal of the personal brand is to sell yourself. So personal branding is selling yourself at simplest terms. It is being able to communicate who you are, what you do, why you do it, and then taking that and clearly communicating it, focusing on how you say it in a really good way. That is what sales foundational skills are. That is what a personal brand is. So I would say before you focus so much on your personal brand, you want to have your sales foundation. You can have all your great personal stories, but if they don't tie in to what you do, to why you do it, and you don't have the skills to communicate them really clearly and effectively, not just on a social media post, but when you sit down in person and talk to somebody, it's a waste of time, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you think of it in terms of like if you were building a startup company that you were going to have 50, 60, 80 employees, whatever it is, right? I mean, the idea that, you would spend all this money on, and I hate to, just to simplify it, right? That you'd spend thousands of dollars on a website, right? You'd spend thousands of dollars on a finance team, thousands of dollars on a marketing team, whatever it might be. At the end of the day, if you can't move the needle and sell something and develop paying customers, you don't have a company, right? So all those things are important, and I don't say that. I don't give those examples to say, oh well, that's not an important part of the business. It clearly is, right? But I would say, and I think you're agreeing here, is if you don't have that sales foundation built, none of the infrastructure you put around it is going to fix it, right? Like you're not going to fix a lack of sales by developing a new website. You're not going to fix a lack of sales by hiring more people to make nicer marketing tools, right? Like you have to sell the product or the service, or none of the other things really matter.
Right. And what I would say is having a strong personal brand can help you sell the product or the service if it's done right.
Right.
So let's take Spanx as an example. So Spanx started as women's shapewear and garments that you can wear under your clothing to have them look a little bit more smooth and seamless on your body. Sarah Blakely is a person outside of that business, that company. So if Sarah Blakely decided she was going to start telling stories of challenging things she overcame in her life that didn't tie directly back to Spanx, and also a little bit of why those stories matter to the customer, how they can inspire the customer, she would be missing the mark. One of her hallmark stories that she tells in her personal brand is how she was selling fax machines door to door and just said to herself, like, I'm in the wrong movie. Like, was her famous line. Like one day she had a moment of like, this is not my movie. This is not my life. Like, this is not what I want. And so then, she kind of had this problem that she was going to an event, a networking event, trying to like get herself out there. She wore a pair of white pants. She didn't have the right thing to wear under it. She decided to create it, and that created Spanx. And so it's this idea of not just Sarah Blakely and her founder story. It's that Sarah Blakely found herself in a situation where she didn't want to be. And she knew to get to that next level, she needed to dress the part. She needed to show up in places where she felt confident. In order to feel confident, she needed something to go under these pants that made her feel confident, and she didn't have it. So she invented it. That story speaks to me as like, yeah, I want to feel confident in my clothing. I want to have something that makes me feel good too. And that helps me want to buy the product. So it's not just a story about her life. It's tied to the brand.
Yeah.
And that's where personal branding goes awry. That's where storytelling, which is another buzzword that I want to talk about, goes awry. So if we're looking at storytelling, we talk about personal branding. Then people say you need to learn how to tell stories. Agree. 100%. You need to learn how to tell stories. But you don't need to learn how to tell stories about your life and the things you've overcome, in my opinion, unless you know how to do more of a story selling. Trademarking that, although I think it might already be trademarked. but you're going to hear me talk about that a lot more.
Yeah. Well,
you need story selling. So you need to be able to tell a compelling story, but then you need to be able to take that and make the listener see themselves in it and see themselves as the star of the story and be like, wow, this person, I relate to them and they have something that can make my life easier, simpler, better. Once you have that skill, then if you want to work on all your own personal storytelling so you can be a compelling person sitting around a dinner table, amazing. But as a business owner, an entrepreneur, or someone in the corporate world that is trying to drive action in a certain direction, you need story selling before you focus on your storytelling.
Yeah. I think a good rule of thumb here is to start with the end in mind, right? Like, I think where we go awry is we have this sort of everyone's guilty of this, right? They're thinking of all these things, and whether it's content or a story that you want to tell to a customer or something like that, you start at the beginning because you've got the cool story bro idea, right? I had a shirt years ago that I think the girls got me for Father's Day. It said "Cool Story Bro." It was
Really?
yeah, it was
I don't
what do you call it?
remember.
Dr. Seuss with the cat in the hat.
Oh, right,
It was like my favorite shirt for about a decade. Not a decade, but like at least 4 or 5 years.
Probably ended up with holes in it. I
Right.
probably had to throw it away when you were
Maybe when I
looking.
wasn't paying attention. But anyway, so that idea of starting without the end in mind is where we kind of get off the rails a little bit
Yes.
here, right? If we know the end state here is to develop something of a founder story in the Sarah Blakely example, right? And that founder story helps promote buy-in and a personal connection to my product, which ultimately drives sales. Run with it, right? If it's just a fun story that you wanted to relay that you don't have anywhere you go, like you're starting a thought without having kind of figured out where you want to take it, that's where we kind of get off the rails.
Yes, exactly. I agree so wholeheartedly with you.
Well, thanks, guys.
I
This is
do,
just like
though.
our last episode when you agreed with me on all my points on fake it till you make it, right?
No, we had to do that as well. I don't agree with you all the time and on some things, but I agree with you on all of
Yeah.
this because and this is what I see going wrong. So even when for entrepreneurs, even like if you open up TikTok, story times on TikTok are really big.
Really?
Yeah. And they're like, they'll be like, okay, story time. And they'll just tell some like random story about, their life or something that they encountered. And they're very entertaining.
Yeah, right.
And I listened to some of them. In fact, I saw a TikTok about these TikToks of somebody being like, me when I get home at the end of the night, and she literally was like on her couch with a snack, cuddled up in her blanket with a glass of wine, and she just like had somebody's story time streaming. Like that's what she's like watching now instead of Netflix. They're very entertaining.
I don't think I've ever seen them.
I don't think you're on TikTok. But to your point of starting with the end in mind, what is your goal? Now, if you are just doing it for creative expression and have fun, go for it. So be it. But chances are, if you're listening to this podcast, you have a bigger goal. That is to sell yourself as an expert, that maybe you want to get booked to speak somewhere, or you want to land a new job, or to sell your product, physical product, or to sell your service. And so if you're just going to show up and do a story time about, the time that I just had the most morbid example. I was going to say the time that your cat died while you were on vacation. That's a story.
We've talked about that, like for some reason, a couple times in the last. I don't know why. Yeah.
Right. But if you want to tell a story time about the time your cat died while you were away on vacation, that is not helping your bottom line. That is not helping your goal. And so when we say you need to tell your story, even a founder story, if I knew Sarah Blakely was selling fax machines door to door and then built this company, that's cool. That makes me interested. And so she's captured my attention, but she still has to tell me a lot of other stories to get me to buy the product. And so your founder story alone is not going to sell for you. Storytelling skills are not going to sell for you. Story selling skills are.
Yeah, it's a key. This reminds me so much of the 10,000 hour rule, which is one of my favorites, right? Like we should do what's the other one? The 100 hour rule as well. Like there's a different one about that, but I want to come back to that because I feel like that's an important one. But the 10,000 hour rule specifically started, there was this whole story about the Beatles, and they played a million gigs when they were all teenagers, and they had, once you get to 10,000 hours, you become an absolute master at your craft, right? Well, the key nuance when you really dig into the 10,000 hour rule, and I think it was Anders, I can't remember his name, it was Anderson. Yeah, but anyway, I wish I should remember his name. I'll have to edit that in. But the key part of this is that it's a specific and targeted goal, and it's targeted practicing, it's focused practicing. It's not just doing something mindlessly, right?
Just to do it,
right? Because just doing something for 10,000 hours doesn't necessarily mean you're going to master that craft, right? Doing something targeted and having a goal and an objective and focused training for 10,000 hours is different than doing a thing for 10,000 hours. And I think that's kind of the nuance that you're getting at here, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, and the other things that fall in this category in the entrepreneurial world are content marketing, creating content on social media, email marketing, being able to use email to, have customer touch points and get them to buy in. All important things, all skills that we need to master, for sure. You need to build a personal brand. You need to be able to tell stories. You need to be able to take those things and put them in content on social media and put them in email marketing. However, If you don't have the sales foundation, AKA, you don't know how to clearly and effectively and compellingly, is that a word? Communicate who you are, what you do, and why it matters to the listener, and then why they should buy your thing, those things don't matter. And so it kind of goes back to like some of the things I've talked about, what reel is going to get more views and how I'm going to get more followers and how do I increase my email open rate and how do I build a personal brand and how do I tell good stories? If you don't have that foundation and it is not rock solid, those things are going to crumble. They will last for a little bit and then they will crumble. So it is your sales messaging foundation. If the goal is to sell yourself or sell a product or service, that matters the most. Where do you see this kind of showing up in the corporate world? So I talked about, the personal branding, storytelling, email marketing, content marketing. How does it show up in the corporate world?
You mean like where do we go wrong?
What are some of the things that are like the buzzwords that people want to focus on that they feel like are so important, but you look at it and you're like, but we still need the sales foundation. If we focus on this without the sales foundation, we're going in the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think of like I said, we're big fans of buzzwords, right? I can think of two that we use. Now, my examples might not be exactly perfect with, aligning perfectly with an entrepreneur. But the one word that we use, not just us, but we use a lot in this space is scaling. So I think as an entrepreneur, I probably would think of like, how do I grow my business bigger, right? In my space, it's certainly that as well, but also the idea of if I have a customer that has a $1 million annual spend with me, how do I get that 1 million to 5, 8, 15, so on and so forth. So scaling within the individual customer is also something we talk about, right? Like that's obvious that is a sales function. It's obvious, right? You can provide a great service. You can be all the things that we claim to be and that we want to be, but we talk about scaling like as if some sort of magical dust sprinkles down and all we have to do is show them how well the things work and they will instantly jump on board. And we know, you and I and everybody listening knows that's just not factual, right? Like scaling is a fun word to say and it makes sense and everybody immediately understands what you're saying, but it's so clear that that's a sales function, and sometimes we sort of miss out on what that is, right?
Yeah. And also I would imagine if you try to scale something, and even if it does gain a little bit of traction, but the foundation isn't good, it eventually will crumble.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, it's obvious, right? The other one we use is alignment. All the rest, customer alignment, aligning with customers, aligning with their goals and objectives, right? That's reinforcing the sales message of what we committed to do, right? What we're trying to do is like when we're aligning with a customer on objectives for the project, we're trying to get them to buy into what we think is important because what we think is important happens to be what we do best, right? So that clearly is a sales function, and I think in most cases they are. And again, I'll come at this from a startup mentality, a company that's got about 100 employees. You've got that scrappy mentality. Every single person who works for this company now has a customer touch point, right?
Right.
Even if you're in finance, even if you're in, obviously, well, maybe not HR, right? But I mean, any other division, IT, customer support, obviously, everybody has contact with a customer because we've got that small, scrappy mentality. One day we scale to 20, I just did it. 20,000 employees, right? If we have 20,000 employees, maybe that's not the case. You've got a lot of internal organizations and a lot of inward-facing employees. But at this point in time, we don't, right? So it's absolutely vital that we understand as a company of this size that every time you touch a customer, that's a sales conversation, right? Even if you're talking about integration, even if you're talking about clinical training, whatever it might be, it's always a sales conversation. And we would do ourselves well to remember that. And I think for the most part we do, right? Sometimes we go off the rails. Everybody does, right? But it would be important to remember that every time you talk to a customer, the end stage goal is to promote your product or service, and you have somewhere you're taking the conversation. It's not just when I get those emails that say just checking in, they make me nuts. Like you can start that way if you want to. I don't like it, but just checking in. How are things?
Do you really care how things are?
No, right. Really it feels like you sent that email to 30 people today, and I happen to be one of them, right? Like last time we talked about X. Where are we on making a decision that helps us get closer to that point? Can we connect next week to push it? Whatever it is, right? But like that idea of starting with the end in mind, right? What is the goal here? everybody on my side of the line here is going to touch a customer at some point in one way, shape, or form, and maybe it may not be a decision maker. It might not be a person who can authorize, sending a PO to us to pay us, but it's a sales conversation. At its core, it's a sales conversation.
Yeah. So true. Alignment. I was thinking that is a buzzword.
Do you guys
in
use
the
that too?
entrepreneurial world. Well, it's about.
I say you guys. Yeah, I don't know why I said that.
It's about that's very much of the woo-woo side of things, like being aligned with your beliefs and your desires and what you want out of your life. And really, to me, alignment is selling yourself on yourself.
I see that, yeah.
It's believing that you are the person that can go do those things. And with the scaling, I feel like the equivalent of that is all of this like evergreen type of things. Like you want evergreen sales, you want passive sales. So if you're not familiar with that term, pretty much, I'm sure most people are, it's the idea of like sales on autopilot. And I am actually purchased a program to help me reconfigure some of my ACORN programs to get them more evergreen. But inside this program, the very first module is kind of like a test of your messaging, like making sure, like it's kind of almost like a self-assessment, like what is the goal? What is the objective? How do you say it? What is in for the customer? And if you skip over that part, or you don't have that part, or you're like, whatever, you're going to go through all these steps to run your course on autopilot and get, try to get these sales. And that's why things don't work. It's why people create courses and it doesn't work, because they don't have the messaging on how to sell it. They don't understand. They can't story sell. All of these things. Gosh, there's so many other things. But
I think in the tech space, that the easiest thing is the tech space is a lot of really smart people, really intelligent people that come up with really good solutions to address problems, right? But there is a thought that you can't divorce yourself from your product to some degree. So you have the full belief in what you've produced, right? And there are some folks who convince themselves that this is going to sell itself. All I have to do is get this in the right. And that's the evergreen message to me a little bit. All I have to do is make sure I can touch more people, and they know that this is available, so they will just certainly buy it because it's obviously so good and beneficial.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, there's, like if I just get enough ads, if I pay for enough ads, I'll get enough people in the funnel and I'll convert them. And I do think in the entrepreneurial space, 10 years ago for sure, maybe even 5 years ago, that strategy may have worked because there weren't that many people out there and there wasn't that much competition. And so you could say, I'm going to teach you how to create your own online business. That was a novel idea. People were jumping at that concept. But now those people that are going to teach you how to create an online business are a dime a dozen. The people that are going to teach you how to get control of your health when you're in your 40s and 50s, a dime a dozen. Like,
really?
Oh yeah, I live in that world.
There might be a lot of things that I don't know about that are a dime a dozen. I feel like
well, you don't spend as much time in the space as I do.
Yeah.
People that are going to help you with your style, dime a dozen. It's all like there's and this is good.
So it's why
because it's we're going to create a future episode on this. Like it's market proof, so it's good. But it's not supposed to be discouraging at all because the negative of 10 years ago is like I had to sell you on why you need these things. And now like we all kind of know, but now I need to sell you on why I'm the person, right? And so it is good that there is demand, but it just makes those sales skills, that messaging foundation, all the more important because you might know you should start an online business, but now you need to now I need to tell you why I'm the person, why my program is right, what's different about me, why you're going to resonate with me, and it's a little bit different than what other people are teaching you.
I'm excited to talk about that because I have lots of thoughts on the
unique
competition in the market space
coming next week.
Yeah. That'll be. I'll save it for then.
Yeah, let's leave on the cliffhanger.
Leave it on the cliffhanger. We could tie it back to the 100-hour. You know what? I just thought of something. The 10,000-hour rule and the 100-hour rule, right? Which is, I got to get details on this.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah, well, my buddy Jesse told me about it.
Jesse who?
Itzler. Do you know him?
Oh.
Yeah. Well, you were talking about your friend Sarah Blakely before, so if you guys listen.
Maybe, oh my gosh.
No,
I'm going to manifest Sarah Blakely and Jesse Itzler on the podcast, like a little, she sells, he sells. Oh, come on.
I would say, I mean, I'm into it.
We
but,
could totally do
yeah.
that. All right.
I'm just saying.
Manifesting it. Everybody have a moment.
Okay.
Close your eyes, Brian.
All right.
Manifest it.
Done. I did it. I manifest fast. I'm like you round in turn 3 in Mario Kart.
Okay.
But no, I think it's the the Jesse Itzler thing. I saw him do something on it recently. I don't think it's his idea, obviously, but the concept is 10,000 hours to become an expert. But what you can do in 100 hours puts you in like the top 5 or 10 percentile. So, anyway. Long-winded taking this back to the idea that I think sometimes people get a little intimidated by sales. They don't feel like it comes naturally for them, and they don't want to start the process because they don't want to spend the quote 10,000 hours to get better at it. And in 100 hours, you can become better than 90% of the population or 95. So I guess I say that to put a bow on this at the end, to basically say you can move the needle drastically and have massive improvement, which translates to a healthier bottom line, more product and services flying off the shelves, right? By committing to 10% of what you think you need in order to become an expert.
Yeah. As you say that, it actually reminds me of my first business, my Sell and Dot business. And so with that business, I was coaching team of, hundreds, thousands of people to sell their product, or not their product or service, to sell the same product that I was selling. And even outside of my team, when you looked at the whole company, there was always like top 10 in sales and like everyone's ranked. And when I look at the people that were in the top, sometimes I was in the top, but many of whom were my friends, you get to know those people, they become your peers, you collaborate together. They weren't, and I say this with like love and admiration for them, but they weren't anything special. They really weren't anything great. They just did it more.
They just did it. Yeah.
They just did it more. And then they got better.
They got better.
But it was more of that like tenacity of like, I'm going to figure this out. I'm going to keep going. I'm going to fail my way forward to success. And when I look at the people that, I coached, when I had someone I was coaching that was like, this isn't working and I just can't sell anything, they weren't putting the time in.
Yeah.
They just, and it really is as simple as that. They were getting discouraged. They were trying one thing. It wasn't working. It was like, well, I'm going to walk away. That doesn't work. It wasn't that constant. I always call it the piñata effect of like hitting the piñata again and again and again.
Yeah.
They just didn't hit it long enough for it to like open up and have the good stuff come out.
Yeah. And I think one of the reasons that people, I don't know, I could be wrong. I think one of the reasons that people get a little bit intimidated that on the front end is, especially in my world, the 10,000 hour rule, pretty much most folks know about that. I think most people in the entrepreneurial space probably do as well. It's pretty relatively well known at this point, right? But there is an intimidation factor to 10,000 hours, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I
don't even know how long. I honestly don't know how long that is. I should probably do the math. I don't know how long that is, but like if you spent 8 hours a day, how long would it take you to get to 10,000 hours, right? A lot of days. Let's just leave it at that.
Well, it's 10. So it's just a little
just use
math.
the calculator.
It's just a little math. I was going to Google how many days is 10.
Well, 1,000 days of 10 hours a day, right? So, but if you were doing, if you divide it by the general work day, 8 hours,
1250.
So it's 3 years of consistently doing it, 7 days a week, 8 hours.
Yeah, 3.5 years almost. Yeah.
But what I saw from Jesse Itzler again was this 100-hour thing, which is, I think it's 17 minutes, if I'm not mistaken. 17 minutes a day for a year.
Wow.
That feels very doable, right? I mean, think about the time that you spend doing 17 minutes in any given 24-hour block. Like, you can commit 17 minutes to targeted focus, getting better, right? And that's what this is to me, the sales messaging, the idea of creating a personal brand. Really, that's telling a personal sales story. It doesn't take a massive amount of time and energy and investment to get better. It takes targeted practice from somebody who knows what they're talking about that can show you the way. 17 minutes a day.
Absolutely. Oh, that's really good. All right. Well done.
That is pretty good. Yeah.
Boom. Boom.
Congratulations to myself.
Yes. All right. Congratulations. I was going to say congratulations, everyone. Congratulations for listening to us.
You guys. Yeah.
Thank you for listening to us. If you're not yet subscribed on YouTube, we will hope you'll go over and do that and start to watch some of these video versions. And more than anything, share this podcast with a friend. That is the biggest and best way that you can help us out. So if you've gotten any value from this episode or any other episodes, I would just ask you, when you finish listening to this, you go ahead and take this episode or maybe one of your favorites and share it with a friend or post it on your social media. That means so much to us and helps us more than you know, as we really lean in and try to grow this podcast to continue to bring you really good value and entertainment.
Yeah. Yes, I agree.
All right, everybody.
Well said.
We'll be back
Thanks.
next week. Thanks.